Welcome everyone to this session where we are continuing our agriculture economics topics, right? So last class we have done supply and supply elasticity, and yesterday was your exam of NFL. I hope the exam went very well for all of you, right? So today we are going to continue with our next chapter, right? So the chapter will contain a few multiple topics like consumer surplus, indifference curves, budget line, and consumer equilibrium, right? So without much further ado, let us start the session, right? So again, you can download our Oliveboard app available on all platforms so that you will get all the notifications instantly. Now, let us start with consumer surplus, right? Because this consumer surplus is still related to your cardinal analysis, right? So what is cardinal analysis? We have learned that there are two schools of thought. One is cardinal and one is ordinal, right? So in cardinal what happens? There is utility measured in terms of utils which is assumed to be physically measurable, right? So there is utility, and with that utility is the want satisfying power of an object, and that is measured in utils which is assumed to be physically measurable. But what about ordinal? Ordinal, it uses preferences or choices of consumers to study their behavior. In ordinal analysis, we don't use utility, right? We use the word preference or we use the word choice, right? So here what we are going to study in consumer surplus is again a cardinal theory, or it comes under cardinal analysis of consumer behavior. It doesn't come under ordinal, right? So first we will finish the consumer surplus analysis and understanding. Okay, so let us start the session by first knowing what is consumer surplus. So again we are going to use the divide and understand rule, where it is consumer is the first word and surplus is the second word, right? So who is a consumer? Who is buying goods or services to satisfy his or her needs. Correct? The consumer is anybody who is buying goods or services to satisfy his or her need. Now what is surplus? Surplus means excess or extra, right? So here when we are talking about consumer surplus, we are talking about the extra satisfaction or the extra utility that the consumer is going to get. Okay, so we are going to analyze the extra satisfaction or the extra utility that is obtained by the consumer, right? So why will the consumer obtain extra satisfaction or extra utility? Let us understand through the statement. The difference between the price a consumer actually pays for a certain quantity of a good or service and the price he would be prepared to pay for it in order to avoid doing without it, right? So what is consumer surplus? It is the difference between the price which the consumer actually pays and the price which he would pay for it instead of going without it. Very simple terms, let us understand. So in a very understandable fashion, let us take the example of mobile. Now all of you know this is a necessity, it's not a luxury anymore. Mobile has become a necessity. Even at home, even if elderly people are there who can't use technology, we are going to teach them how to use it because it's become such a necessity, right? Now let us say you want to purchase one phone. You have come to purchase one phone to the shop, and obviously you don't want to go without buying a phone. You want to leave the shop by buying a phone, right? So what you will do? You will tell my budget is 30,000. So what is this 30,000 rupees? This is what you are prepared to pay, right? So the consumer here, who is you, is prepared to pay even 30,000 rupees for a phone because you don't want to losing 30,000 or giving 30,000 of your money and buying a phone has greater satisfaction to you than saving that 30,000 rupees as cash, right? So now this is what you are prepared to pay, but once you go to the showroom, you see that the phone is 20,000 rupees because there is some discount, right? This is what you actually pay, right? So this is what you are prepared to pay, this is what you actually pay. Now what is the difference between the two? So the difference between the two is 10,000 rupees, right? So you here got a phone, you got a phone for money less than what you had thought you had to pay, right? So you had thought some amount, but you got that product for less than that amount. There is some satisfaction in that. We have all felt it at some point of time, where we keep one budget in our mind and go to a shop and we want to purchase the commodity. But once we reach the shop, we understand that, oh, it's actually cheaper, right? Then you get to save some money. You get to save some money and also purchase the product. So, 2 times you are getting satisfied. That means you are getting extra satisfaction. On top of the satisfaction of buying the commodity, you are getting the satisfaction of saving some money, right? So, that is what consumer surplus is. So, what is consumer surplus? The difference between the price actually paid by the consumer and the price which he is prepared to pay instead of going without the product, right? So that is consumer surplus. So again, this was given by Alfred Marshall. Okay. Now consumer surplus is the gap between the consumer's willingness to pay and his actual payment. So in that example, you are willing to pay 30,000, but his actual payment is 20,000. So the gap is 10,000. So that is your consumer surplus. That is your extra satisfaction, right? So we are going to go in depth also in this. Don't worry regarding that, right? So there are some assumptions when we state the statement of consumer surplus. What is the first one? Marginal utility of money is taken to remain constant during the exchange process, right? So now again we are going back to basics. What is marginal utility? The satisfaction obtained by one additional unit of the commodity, right? The satisfaction obtained by consuming one additional unit of the commodity, okay? So now here money's marginal utility is constant. This is the assumption. That means no matter how much additional money you keep spending, the satisfaction you are going to get from it is same. That is the meaning, right? There are no alternatives for the product in question. So what does the second one mean? It means no substitutes, right? There are no substitutes for the product. That is what this means. No alternatives means no substitutes, okay? There is also no change in consumers' tastes, income or fashion trends in the industry under examination at the given moment. Suddenly you are ready to pay, your income is 50,000, so you are ready to pay 30,000 for that phone. But suddenly if your income becomes 10,000, will you be able to pay 30,000? No, right? And suddenly if your taste changes, if you feel, oh, I don't want a mobile phone at all, okay? So that cannot happen. So we assume that the consumer's tastes, income, preference, everything remains constant, okay? Then what is the fourth one? Each good is regarded as independent of others. So when you are purchasing each commodity, let us say you purchase one mobile, for that you want earphones, for that you want one back cover, for that you want one screen guard, right? So all of this is connected to mobile phone, but here we regard that as all are independent. We say that these three are not dependent to the mobile phone, right? So these are the few assumptions under consumer surplus. Before understanding consumer surplus, once if you read the assumptions, it will be very, very clear, right? Okay. Now, how do we explain consumer surplus? So, consumer surplus follows LDMU. So, LDMU we know law of diminishing marginal utility. What is LDMU? As and when a consumer consumes more and more of a commodity, the marginal utility obtained by it keeps on decreasing. This is LDMU. Okay, so consumer surplus is stated or is the result of LDMU, right? A consumer seeks to be satisfied as much as possible while buying a product, right? This is obvious. If you are buying something, you are spending money on it. When you spend money on it, you aim to be satisfied to the maximum extent, right? So that is a given, that is obvious. He needs to keep buying until the commodity's price equals the marginal utility obtained from it. See, this is very important. He needs to keep buying. Keep buying means keep consuming until commodity's price equals the marginal utility obtained from it, in order for him to be in balance and obtain maximum satisfaction. So, we can interpret this statement as when price of good or service equals marginal utility obtained from it, then consumer gets maximum satisfaction. This is what the third statement is telling. This is the what can we say, defining factor of consumer surplus. When price of a commodity equals the marginal utility obtained from it, then the consumer is getting maximum satisfaction, right? So, then what is the fourth one? Negative marginal utility and decreased pleasure will arise from continued usage of goods. I think this we have seen in LDMU also. When you pass the point of zero marginal utility and further keep on consuming the product, then you will not get satisfaction. You will get dissatisfaction from it. That means it's not pleasurable experience anymore. You are dissatisfied. But you are still buying the product. You are still paying for the product, right? You are still using your money to buy that product. But when you buy that product and consume it, you are not getting satisfaction. You are getting dissatisfaction. So, that payment is of waste. It is of no use. That is the meaning. Okay. Now, this is the first type when we are calculating consumer surplus for a single unit of commodity, right? When you purchase 1 unit of something or 1 piece of something, we use this method, right? Very simple. Consumer surplus is nothing but potential price minus actual price. Potential price. What is potential price? How much consumer is willing to pay. How much consumer is willing to pay, right? So, here let us say if a student is willing to pay 30 rupees for a particular book, but he actually got it in 25 rupees, right? So, all we have to do is subtract 30 minus 25, then we will get rupees 5. This is your consumer surplus. I want you to understand consumer surplus will be taken in terms of money, but you need to know that the measurement is made in terms of marginal utility. Only when marginal utility equals the money, then only consumer surplus will be high in that moment. Okay. What about when there are multiple units of a commodity, right? So, obviously we don't buy only one thing of something, sometimes we buy multiple things, right? So, how do we calculate? Now, this is an example. Kindly focus on the table. So, this is quantity 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 quantities are there. This is the marginal utility that he is obtaining. When he consumes the first unit, he gets 20, then he gets 15, then he gets 10, 5, 0. Can you see that marginal utility is diminishing? I think this is obvious because we told that consumer surplus comes from LDMU, right? So, here you can see that marginal utility is diminishing. Also, here we are calculating marginal utility in terms of rupees, okay? What is the market price? For each commodity or for each unit, he is paying 5 rupees, right? So, if you take an example of some chocolate, let us say Dairy Milk, the 10 rupees Dairy Milk, whether you buy the first unit or the first piece of Dairy Milk, you pay 10 rupees. Whether you buy the 100th unit, you still pay 10 rupees only, correct? So, you are not paying a different price because market price will remain same. What is changing? Marginal utility is changing because you are continuously eating Dairy Milk. First Dairy Milk was very sweet, second one was okay, third one was little less okay. Imagine eating 100 Dairy Milks at a go, right? You don't get the same level of satisfaction. Even though you are paying the same amount of money, your level of satisfaction will vary. So here marginal utility is calculating the level of satisfaction. This is the market price. So what is consumer surplus for 1 unit? We saw the formula. It is potential price minus actual price. So this is your potential price. That means you would pay even 20 rupees for that first dairy milk. Instead of not eating the dairy milk, you are ready to pay even 20 rupees. So it is 20 minus 5, 15. Similarly, 15 minus 5, 10, 5, 0, minus 5. Right? This is the way. But now there are multiple commodities. Okay. So here can you see at the fourth line here, the marginal utility becomes equal to price, right? So that is the point where he is going to get maximum satisfaction, and at that point consumer surplus is 0. This is the point we talked about, where marginal utility becomes equal to the market price. That is the place where he is going to get maximum satisfaction. So now how do we calculate consumer surplus? Of course, here I have calculated, it is already 30. But if this is not there and there are lot of data, how do you calculate? The formula is sum of marginal utility minus, here sum of marginal utility minus price into number of units purchased. So here let us solve this. Sum of marginal utility is 50, right, minus price is 5 rupees into number of quantities purchased, which is 4, because he should stop at 4, because at the fourth quantity marginal utility is equal to price of the commodity. He should not go for the fifth one, because fifth one is not giving him any marginal utility. Can you see? It is 0. Even though he is paying 5 rupees, marginal utility is 0. That means satisfaction is 0. Will you pay money for 0 satisfaction? Never, right? So he should stop at the place where the marginal utility equals the market price. So that is 4 quantities. That's why 5 into 4, which is 50 minus 20, which is 30. This will be your consumer surplus. Clear? Right. So what is the difficulties in measuring consumer surplus? Although we have experienced this event or this phenomena in our lives, all of us must have experienced, right? However small the amount of money or however big, we have experienced it. But there are some difficulties. What are they? It's an imaginary idea. Imaginary meaning, maybe for you it will be true, for me it won't be true, right? So it is all psychological. We can't measure it outside. We can't bring it into reality physically and quantify it. But it still exists in our head. So we call it as imaginary, or even you can also say psychological feeling or idea, right? Then concept of measurement can be challenging due to data non-availability. This is, I think, very obvious. If you see here, can you look at how much data we have? We have quantity, we have marginal utility in price, we have market price, then we calculate consumer surplus. Do you think a consumer has all this data when he goes to buy a product? Of course not, right? So it's very difficult to get all this data. That is one more difficulty. Then if a product has substitutes, it will not be applicable, because if a product has substitute and if you want to purchase that instead of this, your satisfaction will increase because the product will change. So then consumer surplus will not be applicable, right? Then fourth one is money's marginal utility changes throughout time. So what was the assumption? The assumption was that the marginal utility of money does not change. But what is the actual truth? The truth is that marginal utility of money changes. Okay. Consumers have different incomes. Of course, all of us have different earning capacities, different incomes. So we can't compare one person's income to the other or one person's consumer surplus to the other, right? For the same product, one person might give higher consumer surplus, one might not get that much. Okay. Then the entire demand and price list is not available to consumers. Like I told you, information of demand, price, marginal utility, etc. is not available to the consumers. That is one more problem. Okay. Then along with this, there is one more thing that you need to know, Angel's law of family expenditure. So this Angel was someone who studied family expenditure, or he studied family budgets. Okay, when did he study this? In 1857. So what he did, he studied family budgets of three types of families, right? Rich, middle class and poor. So he studied the family budget of three types of families and he came to three conclusions. So those three conclusions are known as Angel's law of family expenditure. So what are they? First one is, even while the quantity of money spent on food increases as family income rises, the percentage of income that goes towards it declines. See, you need to understand there are two concepts here. First one, he is telling, even if the quantity, that means the amount of money spent on food increases, the percentage of money spent on it will keep on declining. For example, let us say when the income was 20,000, right? There's one family spent 2,000 rupees on food. So what is the percentage? 2,000 by 20,000 into 100. Right? So that is 10% of the income is spent on the food, right? Now let us say the income raised to 30,000. Okay, and they started spending 3,000 rupees on food. Can you see there is increase in income, there is increase in quantity spent on food, there is increase in quantity of money spent on food, but what is the percentage? What is the percentage of income spent on food? It is still 10%, right? So here if the income rises to 40,000 and they still increase the income, they increase the quantity spent on food, the percentage will reduce even more. Clear? So this is what is said by the first law. Then second one, for all income levels, the percentage spent on clothing, housing, rent, electricity and fuel remains the same. No matter whether you are rich, poor or middle class, the amount of money you spent on clothes and everything is relatively the same. Then with each increase in the family's income, the percentage spent on recreation, healthcare and education rises, right? So I think this is obvious. When a family becomes well-to-do, what happens is they start spending on very other things like education, healthcare and entertainment and all that. So these three are the Angel's law of family expenditure, right? Then, so now indifference curve approach is something that we have to start and it is a very, very important topic. So let us start it now. So I hope all of you are paying attention. Now what we are going to start is the ordinal analysis of consumer behavior. Till now whatever we did was cardinal analysis. That means we studied utility, we studied marginal utility, total utility and all that. Now what we are going to start is ordinal analysis, where utility is not used. In the place of utility we are going to use preferences or choices of the consumer to study their behavior, right? So I hope this is clear. Now what are indifference curve approach? This ordinal analysis is also known as indifference curve analysis or indifference curve approach. We are going to study what indifference curves are, right? So what are indifference curves? They were given by Hicks and Allen to do utility analysis or analysis of satisfaction. So they are the primary tools. Now what is indifference curve? It is a curve which depicts all the combinations of two products which provide the same satisfaction to the consumer. So it is a curve which depicts the combinations of two goods which provide the same satisfaction to the consumer. Now let us take an example, commodity X, commodity Y, right? So here I would like you to understand, till now we studied only one commodity at a time. We are studying only one commodity, but now we are going to start studying two commodities at a time, right? Commodity X, commodity Y taken together in some quantities of each. X and Y will be taken in some quantities of each and we call this as a bundle, bundle of 2 goods, bundle of 3 goods, whatever it is. But for simple understanding, we are going to take a bundle of 2 goods, right? I hope it is clear. Now let us understand what is indifference curve, how is it called. Now let us say there are 5 x's and 10 y's, okay. This is your first bundle. Then there will be 6 x's and 8 y's. This is your second bundle. Then there will be 7 x's and 6 y's. This is your third bundle, okay. So a consumer is presented with 3 bundles of 2 goods. You have to listen to me very carefully. A consumer is presented with 3 bundles of 2 goods which provide same level of satisfaction to him. 1 equals 2 equals 3. In terms of satisfaction, that means the consumer is indifferent between bundle 1, bundle 2 and bundle 3. It doesn't, being indifferent means it doesn't matter to him whether you give him bundle 1 or 2 or 3, because all the 3 bundles are going to provide to him same level of satisfaction. So he doesn't care, right? So when these bundles are graphed on x-axis by taking quantity of one commodity on x-axis and quantity of another commodity on y-axis, we get something known as an indifference curve. So your indifference curve will be something like this, okay. So here we take x, here we take y. So all these things will be here. All the 3 commodities, all the 3 bundles will be present on the indifference curve, right. But now we are talking only about bundle 1, 2 and 3. But can you see this curve has lot more other points like this, which I am marking right now, right. So all of them will depict bundles of 2 goods, right, and they are on the same indifference curve, this indifference curve. So each point on the indifference curve will represent bundle of 2 goods which provide same level of satisfaction. So that is your indifference curve. I hope it is clear how we got the indifference curve and what is the indifference curve, right. Then, so what is indifference schedule, indifference curve and indifference map? So indifference schedule is nothing but x, y, that is schedule 1, x, y, schedule 2. When we say schedule, we study demand schedule and supply schedule. It is nothing but it gives all the information in a tabular form. Here, this is bundle A, bundle B, bundle C, bundle D, bundle E. So there are 5 bundles of 2 commodities x and y which give the same level of satisfaction. Bundle A gives same level, B, C, D, E gives same level of satisfaction in schedule 1, right. So here if you can see, I have marked this schedule 1 is blue color, this schedule 2 is red color curve. So this blue color, can you see it is going down and all the points are present here, all the bundle points are present, and similarly red is going down, that is your indifference curve. When the indifference schedule is mapped or drawn as a graph, we get the indifference curve. And when more than one indifference curve is present, like you know, similar to like this, and even here there is 1, 2, 3 curves, then we say that it is an indifference map, right. Then what is properties of indifference curve? Indifference curve has a negative slope. Negative slope means it slopes downwards and slopes rightward. See, sloping downward can either mean this or it can mean this. So this is towards the right, right. So indifference curve, it slopes towards the right. It doesn't slope towards the left. Okay. To maintain the earlier level of satisfaction, the quantity of y is reduced while the quantity of x is increased. I think here you can see, to maintain the level of satisfaction. One second. Okay. So in this indifference schedule, if you see, to maintain the level of satisfaction that is obtained in bundle A to be maintained in bundle B, here addition is done, here minus is done, that is subtraction is done, right. So one commodity, if it is increased, the other commodity has to decrease. So then only it will match the previous bundle's satisfaction. Otherwise, it won't match. Okay, that is the property. Then indifference curves are convex to origins since it is assumed that MRS XY diminishes. So now what is MRS XY? It is nothing but marginal rate of substitution, right? So marginal rate of substitution of X for Y. Okay. So when we say marginal rate of substitution, it is the rate at which one commodity is replaced or substituted by the other. And the assumption is that in indifference curve analysis, it keeps on decreasing. Okay. So that is the second property. Then the third property is that on an indifference map, the indifference curve will go through a specific point, that is they cannot intersect. So what is an indifference map? We saw when there are multiple indifference curves like this, we call it as an indifference map. The assumption is that in an indifference map, two indifference curves, they can't intersect like this. So why? Let us say this is point A, this is point C and this is point B. This is curve 1 and this is curve 2. So in curve 1, A should be equal to B in level of satisfaction. Similarly, in curve 2, A should be equal to C in level of satisfaction. Then following these two, because A equals B and A equals C, then B should be equal to C in level of satisfaction. But is that the case? It is not the case, because B and C lie on different indifference curves. So when we say indifference curve or indifference map, you need to understand that each indifference curve can pass through only one point. It can't pass through multiple points or they cannot intersect. Okay. Now what is a budget line? So indifference curve, we know it is a downward sloping curve. What is a budget line? So budget line is a line that connects two points which represent the quantity of two goods which can be purchased by an individual if he spends all his income on only one product. Or budget line is also the curve whose each point depicts a combination of goods which can be purchased by the consumer with his given income. Now let us take an example to understand. We know what budget is. All of us have a budget. Now let us say your budget is 50 rupees and you want to buy X and Y. Two commodities you want to purchase. X is 5 rupees, Y is 10 rupees. Okay. Now there are three things that you can do. First thing, you can purchase all X. Then how many X's can you purchase? 50 by 5, which is 10 units. Correct? Second thing you can do, all Y. How many? 50 by 10. That is 5 units. What is the third thing? Combo of X and Y that you can purchase. But when you purchase a combination of X and Y, you need to make sure that the sum of the amount that you spend on them should be equal to 50. Because your budget is only 50. You can't spend more than 50. And the assumption is that no consumer will spend less than 50. Because less than 50 means his maximum satisfaction is not reached. And we want to reach maximum satisfaction. Right? So here what we are going to do, a consumer always spends money on a combination of two goods. Now let us say budget is M, price of X commodity is PX, price of Y commodity is PY, right? So here PX into QX, QX is quantity of commodity X purchased, right? I am repeating, QX is quantity of commodity X purchased. PX into QX will give his spending on commodity X, right? Plus PY into QY. QY is quantity of commodity Y purchased. PY into QY will give you the amount of money spent on commodity Y. This should always equal your budget. It should not be more or less than your budget. So this is your budget equation. Okay. Now what is budget line? Let me clear this to draw the budget line. So in this example, can you see the first and second point? When a line connects these 2 points, then we say that line is a budget line. So we take a graph, we take here quantity of commodity X on X axis and quantity of X, quantity of Y on Y axis. Let us say this is 5 units and this is 10 units, right? Because he can purchase 10 units if he spends all his money on X. Then if he spends all his money on Y, he can purchase 5 units. So those two are the extreme points, because at 5, this point, there is 0x and here there is 0y, correct? It is 10, 0, it is 0, 5. Then when you connect these two, the line that you get is your budget line. This is your budget line, okay? So slope of the budget line is also called as price ratio of the given two commodities, okay? So now we saw that M equals Px into Qx plus Py into Qy. This is your budget equation. When you convert this into a line, it becomes a straight line connecting two extreme points, okay? So here this point H is above the budget line and point K is below the budget line. They are not on the budget line. So what is the relation? Now let us take this point as S. This I am naming, which is on the budget line. So here S is lesser than H and K is lesser than S. That means at H, this combination. So at H, what is he buying? 4x, 5y, right? And at K, what is he buying? 2x, 2y. This combination of two goods, this one is over his budget. That means it is more expensive than his budget. And this combination is less expensive than his budget, okay? So when we, according to this classification, there is what we need to remember is that any point above the budget line is expensive than the budget and any point below the budget line is cheaper than the budget. So when I say any point below the budget line and above the budget line, that point is representing combination of two goods, because on X axis you are taking quantity of X and on Y axis you are taking quantity of Y. Clear? Then what is consumer equilibrium? So this is very important. Here we are going to merge the concept of indifference curve and budget line. So these are indifference curves. Can you see IC1, IC2, IC3? So how are you getting indifference curves? You are taking the preference of the consumer and you are putting them on the map or on the curve and you are getting a downward sloping curve. That is your indifference curve. Then can you see this straight line, which is the budget line? Here I will put two red dots. These two red dots are the budget line. The line connecting that is the budget line, okay? So what is the budget line? All the points on the budget line depict combinations of two goods which the consumer is able to purchase with his given income. That means it is feasible for him to purchase, okay? Now see, the common sense point is you want to gain maximum satisfaction with the income that you have. That is the common sense point, okay? Now let us see point R, point S, point T and point H. They are all on the budget line, meaning the consumer can purchase these commodities with his income. Okay, one point is clear. But can you see they are all on indifference curves which is below point Q? Q is on IC3. But R, S, T, H are on IC2 or IC1, which is below IC3. So whichever indifference curve is higher, they give more satisfaction than the lower one. So when he is able to get more satisfaction from purchasing Q combination, Why will he purchase a lesser combination, right? So the thumb rule is that the consumer should always purchase that combination of goods which is represented by the point of tangency of budget line and indifference curve. At the point of tangency of budget line and indifference curve, consumer will have maximum satisfaction. And because he has maximum satisfaction, he cannot get this much satisfaction in any other combination. So we say he is in equilibrium. At the point where budget line is tangent to the indifference curve, we say the consumer is at equilibrium because he is getting maximum satisfaction. So how is it shown? So also at that point of tangency, slope of indifference curve is equal to slope of budget line, right? This is slope of indifference curve, this is slope of budget line. So when these two are equal, then we say consumer is equilibrium. If in the question MCQ is asked, at the point of consumer equilibrium, what is the slope or what is the point, how is it depicted through slope of budget line and indifference curve? Either the first one or the second one here. Let me write it. Either the first one or the second one should be your answer. Clear? So I hope you have understood indifference curves and budget line and consumer equilibrium and consumer surplus. That's it for today, guys. I hope you all had a good time watching these videos. Let us continue our agriculture economics session from tomorrow. Have a very good day. Have a very good night. Thank you for watching.